welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I am, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 206th episode, our guest is Howie Statland. Here is how he describes himself and his store, Rivington Guitars. This year, we are celebrating 23 years of business, 23 years of finding guitar players the guitar of their dreams. Located at 73 East 4th Street, our store is right in the heart of the East Village of Manhattan. We like to keep our prices low and our customers delighted. We buy, sell, trade, and repair all vintage guitars, amps, keyboards, and more. Our expert repair shop features quick, reasonable prices and reliable service. Since we opened in 1998, Rivington Guitars has come to be known as the best little guitar store in New York City, and this is a reputation we have earned. Rivington Guitars specializes in vintage guitars, and we know vintage guitars. It's what we do best. We have over 350 vintage guitars in stock at all times. Fender, Gibson, Gretsch, Martin, Rickenbacker, Silvertone, and Harmony, as well as many other unusual brands. Owner and proprietor Howie Statland is a featured survey participant for the Vintage Guitar Price Guide. He is one of 25 select guitar dealers throughout the USA who helps determine the values set forth in the Vintage Guitar Price Guide. He has been dealing guitars for over 20 years. A list of some of our satisfied clients include Paul Simon, The Killers, The Strokes, Courtney Love and Hole, Elvis Costello, Jeff Tweedy and Wilco, The Black Keys, Cults, Green Day, Arcade Fire, Brian Jonestown Massacre, Vampire Weekend, Motley Crue, Jonathan Richman, Mumford & Sons, Jay Mascis and Dinosaur Jr., The Smashing Pumpkins, Nora Jones, Peter Bjorn and John, and many other local New York City working musicians. Our store began in 1998 on Rivington Street, hence our name, and expanded to a larger location on East 4th Street in 2008. We have since opened an acoustic store called Rivington Guitars Unplugged on the same street as our main store. Besides selling fine vintage guitars, we also offer guitar lessons at affordable rates, rental services, and appraisal services. Our website is updated daily and our inventory is on our website. There's always something new at Rivington Guitars, so come in today. And now on to the show. Well, hey, thanks for doing this tonight. I appreciate you taking the time.
You got it, Rob.
Yeah. Well, just to start out with, I'm very familiar with you and your store because I've watched pretty much every single thing you post on Instagram at this point. But
Cool.
if you could just go ahead and introduce yourself for people that don't know who you are.
Howie Statland, a musician and the owner of Rivington Guitars.
Yes. And as I mentioned, very, very good follow if you're into guitars and vintage guitars and historical guitars on Instagram. Very just fascinating videos that you have on there. So good job on that.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Appreciate that, man.
Oh, no problem. I wanted just to start out with, though, talk a little bit about how you got started in this whole music business. How did you start playing? How did you start deciding to sell? What's your story?
Well, I had bands. I was in a band in the 90s called Thin Lizard Dawn, and we did a lot of things. We put out a bunch of records by ourselves, and then we got signed to RCA, and we did 3 records for RCA, and we toured with a lot of people like Lenny Kravitz and the Verve Pipe when they were big. We went around with them, and the Lemonheads, a lot of different bands we played with. And then my band broke up, and my band was like my life. And then we broke up. The guy who we were renting rehearsal space from had started Rivington Guitars with a partner, and his name was Tom Nastasi, and he wanted to, like, as soon as he opened it up, he had a falling out with his partner. And I knew this guy, and my band had broken up, and I was looking for jobs. I was working in I used to work in the theater before my band got signed and stuff. And I was just looking for odd jobs. And then I heard that he had a falling out with his partner, and he was going to turn the store, which is not like it is now. It was very small, and he was going to turn the store into a bar. And I was like, just let me run the store and I can make this work for you. So he hired me and I ran the store for a few years. And then he just wanted to get out of it.
Mm.
And I essentially took over the lease and took over the business. And he took his guitars and I started my own thing from like scratch.
Wow.
And, yeah. And so that was in 1998, 99. And we were on Rivington. And so, yeah. And I still was playing music. I had a band called New York City Smoke.
Mm.
And also I played with Philip Glass and did some experimental music.
Mm.
Yeah. And I just sort of, the whole time that I was playing, I was always such a gearhead. And just that opportunity just was perfect for me. And I just seized it and just, I didn't even know if I could, make a guitar store work. And now, like almost 25 years later, it's been great.
Yeah. And you just have I'm looking on your website here, just you got the list of your clients. You just go on and on. Just anybody that that I'm interested in has been through your store. How did you kind of establish yourself though? Because I mean, you're in New York City. I imagine there's a million guitar stores in the city. How did you kind of get your foothold and kind of distinguish yourself from the pack here?
Well, from the beginning, I always got guitars that I would want to have and guitars that you couldn't get at Guitar Center or you couldn't get at the other guitar stores.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always travel, and my band traveled. So I would always travel and seek out, the special thing about my store is there are guitars that you can't get elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm for the most part, like mainly vintage guitars. I don't sell any like new lines or anything like that because that's sort of how I set myself apart from other guitar stores. You're not going to see any of like, new Taylors or nothing against Taylor, but we just, I just wanted to have special guitars. So I traveled all over the country getting guitars. And then I just, set up shop. And I feel like, bands would just find me. And there's a lot of bands that I sold their first like fuzz pedals to.
Cool.
Yeah. And so it's been, that really, makes me feel good when I know what works for me, with like fuzz pedals, and I can show another musician that and, turn them on to tones. And that's what makes it exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's partially why I enjoy watching your videos so much, because I every single guitar you show it's like it's got, you can tell it's got a story and a history and it's unique, and it's like you said, you're not going to find it just off an assembly line. I mean, at one time you could, a lot of them, I'm sure, but not much anymore, I'm sure.
Right.
But I assume have to do a lot of research with these guitars. Like you have to educate yourself a lot on the history of these brands and companies and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, there's the best book I think is American Guitars by Tom Wheeler. I read that whenever somebody starts to work for me, I'm like, you got to read this book because it gives you a synopsis of like every American guitar maker. And yeah, you just have to do a lot of research. I mean, there's just, and a lot of, not only do you do research and read about it, but you have to know if something is correct or not. So you have to have experience looking at, neck dates and like pots and whether something is original or not. You just have to have the experience of having seen what is original stuff.
Do you ever have the experience of finding out something that is advertised as one thing ended up, after you look into it a little further, not as much? It's like when you see the Antiques Roadshow and it's like, the same person thinks they've got like the special treasure and they're like, well, no, this is a fake here and this is worth nothing. So
I do. I actually have a couple stories.
Oh man,
that are pretty crazy. One time I bought, do you want to hear it? Do you want to hear it?
Absolutely.
One time I at a guitar show, I bought it was at a guitar show in Long Island, and I bought a ES 335 that was supposed to be a 1961. Somebody a 1961 ES335 will have like 5 serial numbers as opposed to like a 67 ES335, which will have 6 serial numbers. So somebody had erased one of the serial numbers.
Ooh.
And I didn't look closely enough, and I bought it sort of quickly and sort of believed the guy. And it turned out I bought it, and after I bought it, I looked more closely at it, and I actually showed it to a colleague of mine, and he was like, you didn't buy that. That's not a 61, that's a 67. And I was like, oh man, that's a 67. I mean, this so rarely happens that I make mistakes happen.
Right.
But so I called the guy and I was like, this is not what you told me it was. It's a 61. It's a 67. You told me it was 61. There's a big difference in price between a 61, a 67, 335, and 61. 61, they had Mickey Mouse ears, which is the way that the cutouts look like Mickey Mouse ears. Also, the neck angle was different. The neck shape was totally different. They had different pickups. So I wanted him to, make it right. And so he was like, come to my house, and I've got other guitars. He was like, first he was like, you had the opportunity to look at it, a deal's a deal. You're done. And I was like, look, man, that's not right. You told me it was something that it wasn't. Right thing to do is to make it right. I'll buy more guitars from you. Let's just make this right. So I took my assistant. He was like, come to my house. So I went to his house, and I'm driving to his house, and I passed like this security gate. And it's like out on Long Island, way out. And turns out he's in like this mansion, and he has tons of cool guitars. Refinished Mustangs, refinished Mustangs, old Jaguars, old Tele Customs, all this stuff. And he made it right. I must have bought like 20 guitars from him.
Wow.
Going to his house, and all really cool stuff. And he was like Billy Joel's like neighbor.
Oh,
he
wow.
lived next to Billy Joel. It's pretty crazy, man. He meets some crazy people.
Yeah, I'll bet. I mean, I guess a good thing you didn't burn that bridge, I guess. Then.
No, and I made extra money by making this mistake. And another time, one other time that it happened, the mistake led to more money as well. So it was just like, yeah. So
that's cool.
What business can you make mistakes in that then get turned into more money? I don't know.
I know, right? Exactly. But do people ever do things? I mean, I'm sure they do to guitars. I mean, there's other Instagram accounts I follow of terrible guitar modifications, and it's just like sacrilegious what people have done to their guitars. And like people, I'm sure you see this sometimes where people like tried to make it better, and they totally just made it it's completely destroyed now.
All the time.
Oh, yeah, man. What's like the most common example of that? What are people trying to do that they shouldn't be doing?
Oh, well, guitar players are notorious tinkers. I mean, all guitar players think they can get a better tone by messing with their pickups and their wood. So they'll always, they'll have a very common, they'll route a single coil pickup for a humbucker. They'll route the body and put a humbucker in there. And I mean, I understand that, but on a vintage guitar, just get a different guitar.
Yeah, seriously.
But they'll be like, no, I don't want to. I want it to play like this, but with a thicker tone of a old PAF, and so they'll do something like that.
Oh man. Now, I've seen on your website where there's some like handmade guitars. How do you price that? How do you determine the value? I mean, I'm sure just the craftsmanship that you observe is part of it, but and maybe who did it, I guess, probably matters too. But how often do you encounter the handmade guitar that's actually a good piece?
Honestly, not very often. I don't know how those you actually saw on my site.
I think I just saw the one, maybe
one, and I think, yeah, I think what it is like a vintage like Regal that somebody messed with. I don't think that the whole thing was completely homemade.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so generally homemade guitars is not my forte. I generally look for Fender and Gibson and Martin that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if something's cool that I come across that I dig, I'll get it, and because I think somebody else will dig it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does somebody modifying it like artistically, is there ever a positive way that someone has, I don't know, decorated the body, or some modification that's actually a good thing? I mean, I know with vintage you want it as original as possible, right?
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with Eric Clapton's guitar, The Fool?
Is that the super psychedelic?
Yeah.
Is that the SG you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen that one. Mm-hmm.
That would
Yeah.
be one that was
Okay.
created by it was painted by some famous 60s art
Mm-hmm.
collective or something, and that's a famous guitar, so that's one that would be you know cool. And also Jimi Hendrix had a Flying V that was painted,
Mm,
and also George Harrison during Magical Mystery Tour had that Stratocaster that was painted like a rainbow.
right. Mm-hmm.
There's certainly been a lot of painted guitars that are historically significant in the annals of rock and
Sure.
annals of rock and roll, however you say that.
Yeah. I got it. But but how many guitars do you own personally outside of the store? I imagine it's difficult to pass some on.
I have like 15 guitars, and all the guitars that I've really had for a long time.
Okay.
It's sort of rare that I mean, I do have a couple right now that I'm trying to keep, but it's hard. I got to pay my bills, and
Sure.
you know, don't so but I mean, I have the guitars that I have. What I was going to say is the guitars that I have are ones that I've used on records and that really have a place in my heart that I've used them.
Sure.
So guitars need to be played, and if they're not being played by me, they should move on to another person. They need love.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So I have 15 guitars roughly.
Oh, that's low. I thought you were gonna say more than that. I don't know that I'd be able to let go of some of those ones I've seen.
Yeah, I'm good with the 15, man. I feel like 15 is the number of like ones that I can get the right sound for doing
right
many guitars.
What do you like playing the most? Like what type of guitar?
I have a 62 Jazzmaster. That's my favorite guitar. My first really good guitar was a Les Paul. I have a 93 Les Paul Classic Premium Plus. That was like, I saved up all my bar mitzvah money and bought that
Nice.
when I like graduated college.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was the first good guitar I got. And then the second guitar I got was a 65 Gibson SG Junior. And I got that when my band got signed and I got some money from the record label. That was like the thing that I got for myself. And that was the first vintage guitar I ever bought, and I still have it.
Cool.
And that was the beginning for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a SG Epiphone, but SG in high school when I was in my high school bands, and that stayed with me for a long time. And these days I'm playing a hollow body Gretsch, and I love it. It's my favorite guitar now.
Sweet.
Yeah, I always wanted a hollow body. I'm blanking on the name. You know what I'm talking about, the arch top. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I always wanted one, but I like the twangy sound those give. I wasn't prepared for that before I played one, and I really was blown away by that kind of twangy sound. I really like it. Very cool. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have a Gretsch. I have a Chet Atkins 6120.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice. That'll do.
64, yeah.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any guitars that are like your white whales that you're like always on the hunt for? Like if one came across it, you'd snap it up right away just because it's so, you don't see it very often.
Yeah. There's several of those. I mean, any old jazz masters, what I love. That's like my favorite guitar. but also Epiphone Wilshires, any old Epiphone Wilshires or Epiphone like slab body in the 50s. They made a slab body, like Les Paul Jr. kind of guitar, but an Epiphone. Those are incredible.
That's awesome.
They're hard to find. Yeah.
Yeah. But how have you been doing? I have a buddy here. I live in Indiana, and my buddy Mark has a guitar store here as well. And he was telling me that they were doing great through the pandemic, while everyone else was hurting. Everyone was obviously just sitting home playing guitar. So yeah. So has you? What's that?
What's your buddy's guitar store called?
It's Reno's Music in Fishers, Indiana.
Cool.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, wow. So when it started, it was really difficult because everyone, first of all my employees scattered.
Right.
And I had to close my store. I was trying to keep my store open, and then they had mandated the stores to close. So we closed, and I had to go back and ship guitars. I was still selling on the internet.
Oh, wow.
But nobody knew what was really going to happen. So I was just like selling on the internet and shipping guitars, and I'd have to go to the store and ship guitars. And at first, I mean, our business was down like 70%.
Oof.
And yeah, we suffered for months. But then people started, buying, because they weren't really, people started getting, the government injected, trillions of dollars into the economy.
Oh yeah.
And people had money, so that they spent their money on goods, which were guitars. So I sold a lot of guitars, but I make money when I buy guitars, because I have really special guitars. So if I can find the guitars that I can buy, and I had really a hard time finding guitars. So that's been a problem. But now, since things have opened up a little bit better, I've been able to find them a lot better. And the demand for guitars is definitely through the roof. I mean, people have definitely taken to music, taken to playing guitar during this whole COVID situation, and it's definitely benefited the business. I mean, guitar sales and musical instrument sales are definitely way up. It's just a matter, and vintage guitars are way, like the price of vintage guitars is way up. So it's pretty crazy. It's hard. It's really supply and demand with the vintage guitars. There's less supply and more demand, making the price go up. So it's definitely gone up at least 15% over the past year.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, he helped me this past year sell my SG, and I was expecting, weeks and weeks on the market or whatever, and he put it on that, guitar hotline or whatever, and like within like a day, he was like, "I got an offer. You want to take it?" And I'm like, "Already? Didn't you just list it?" Like, yeah, people are hungry for guitars, man.
True.
Yeah, definitely. But how's it been? You said it's opened up a little bit more, so you're able to do more in-store stuff, I'm assuming, and that's...
Yeah, well, I went to Texas and got some guitars. I went to Philadelphia and got some guitars. I went to Detroit. I have to travel to get this stuff. This stuff doesn't just walk into my store.
Right. Well, I was going to ask you about that, because I've seen the videos where you talk about coming back from a buy trip or whatever. So when you go on one of these trips, do you have it all mapped out? Do you kind of just see what you find along the way? Are you looking for certain guitars, or what's your process for planning for those?
It's just been a matter of experience, and having done this so long and traveled through the US for so long looking for guitars. I have people all over the country that I hook up with that look for guitars for me. So they look for guitars. I go to people's houses. I just went to a guy's house in Philadelphia and bought his 1957 Gretsch Jet Firebird. So I go to people's houses. I go to guitar shows when I can. I go to I just have ways of... there's people with I buy collections. There's people that contact me with their collections. It's just a myriad. Is that a word?
Yep, you did it.
A myriad of different ways that I get guitars. So,
do pawn shops figure into this at all?
Yeah, I'll go to pawn shops. but I wouldn't say that's my main source of guitars.
Okay. Is there a favorite era of guitars? Do you think it was, is there a golden age that you consider like the best? Or does it depend on the company, I guess, more?
I'd say the 50s, anything 52 to early 60s. Once I'd say between like 52 and 64, when the Beatles hit, they really started producing a lot more guitars when the Beatles became popular in 64. So that created changes in the industry that are reflected in the quality of the guitars. So
right.
And the solid body electric guitar was invented in 1952. It's probably, between 54 and 59 or 62, it was perfected between those years. It's really the specimens between those years are really the most perfect guitars there are, between like 54 and 60, 62.
I think it's fascinating because I always see like Jack White and stuff with those. You probably know the name of it. It's like a super cheap. I mean, at the time, I'm sure it's expensive now, but plastic guitars that came out of like a Sears catalog, but now everybody wants them. Maybe I don't think it's Dan Electro, or maybe it's Fox or
Silvertones.
Silver. There you go. That sounds right. Yeah, I think that's that's what I mean. Yeah,
Jack White definitely drove that market up. Same with Dan Auerbach from the Black.
Right.
Yeah, he's bought a bunch of guitars from me.
Cool.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. Those definitely, I think one thing that definitely drives the market on particular models is who's playing them, especially when it's somebody like Jack White or Jimmy Page or Eric Clapton.
Yeah, definitely. But how did you decide to get into the Instagram game? Because like I said, I'm just blown away by it's just, they're so fun to watch for me.
Thank you. Well, I started doing Instagram maybe 10 years ago when it first started. I had a photographer who was an assistant of mine. And he just started taking really cool photos of guitars. And I was like, this is cool. This is reaching a lot of people. And then eventually he ended up moving to Maine. And then I was like, it was like a thing that we did. So I had to hire somebody to do it. And then we kept doing it. And then when the pandemic happened, that was like, everyone was looking at the computer and Instagram and like, it was just all internet driven sales. There was no other way for me to sell guitars.
Right.
I was like, just have to focus. I just had to adapt and focus on the internet because the store, I mean, my store does really well. Like people walking in the store. I mean, there's a lot of people, there's not that many people who do what I do, but there's some people who try to do what I do and they do it just on the internet only. And so I had to, when the pandemic happened, I had to focus on the internet. So I met this guy, his name's Greg Litt, and he graduated from Skidmore College, which is where I went to college. And he sent me a film that he did about like snow on campus and how there should be more snow days at Skidmore College. And I was like, you'd be great for making films for my website. Just come here and let's do this. And he came to my store and that's when we started sitting down and just talking about the guitars and playing them for the camera that we could put on Instagram. So it's really feels natural to do it that way. Yeah.
It's got to be a great way to reach people, and it's such a good like format for it. You know what I mean? Like it definitely uses the space well. I really enjoy it. I noticed on your website here was something really interesting. You were one of 25 people in the country who determined the value set in the vintage guitar price guide. How did that happen?
So there's Vintage Guitar Magazine, and they put out a price guide every year. And there's a gentleman named Gil Hembre and Alan Greenwood who write the price guide, and they pick people who they know in the business, who with reputations for selling guitars or whatever, and survey them every month on what they've sold and how much they've sold it for.
Mm-hmm.
So they contacted me
Mm.
to be one of those guys. So that's how that happened.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I guess they trust your ability to price things correctly then. So.
Hope so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Hope I'm not throwing them off.
Okay, so you know that they have the the guitars that are new.
Relict. It's called Relict.
It's called what?
Relict.
Relict. Got it. So they have those that are new, and obviously that's not natural. No one's actually played them, but people want that look. So you're actually selling vintage guitars,
right?
And so if you're selling an actual vintage guitar, is it still okay if it looks like that? Because it seems like people want it to look like that if they're buying new ones that are made to look like that.
Yeah, the main thing that does determine the value of the guitar is if it is all original. It can be worn.
Oh, okay.
And it can have marks on it and stuff. You just want it to be original. You want the finish to be original. You want the parts to be original. You just don't want those things to be changed.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I don't mind if a vintage guitar has like a palm mark where somebody, like a bass where somebody's rested their palm for like 20 years. That's okay with me. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Now, is there like certain designs of guitars that hold up better over time? Is there some that just kind of fall apart if you don't take care of them real well? Like I know that some, have like really like I'm thinking of like the Firebird that's just like a really like angular guitar. Is there certain guitars that are harder to keep together over time or just don't hold as, even though they're good guitars, they may just fall apart?
Yeah, well, Firebirds are notorious for having broken parts.
Okay.
Broken headstocks, but super cool guitars.
Oh yeah.
They always fall and break.
Yeah.
Same with most Gibsons, just like the neck is just made in such a way that if it falls, it's probably going to break and crack. But Fenders are not like that. So that's one advantage of a Fender is if your Telecaster falls over, it probably won't crack.
Mm-hmm.
Gibson probably will.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's any better or worse. It's just it's probably a sturdier guitar if you're going to treat it poorly.
But yeah, like you've got, how many guitars do you have at any one given time in your store?
Right now we're at 250.
Wow. Okay. Is that a normal amount? Is that high?
Yeah,
low?
pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And do you find a lot of people trying to just like do a straight up swap? Do you do that ever? Just swap one for the other?
Totally. We're totally open to trading. Trading can be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm totally open to trading.
Cool. Yeah, it seems like it might be hard sometimes because I'm sure somebody wants a completely different guitar than what they have. But if it's worth, enough, I'm sure you can make it worth it. So that's cool. That's cool. Well, hey, I really appreciate you taking all this time and talking to me. And one question I always ask at the end, and I knew you'd have a good answer for this, is what music have you been listening to lately?
I've been listening to a band called Geese. Have you heard of them?
No, I haven't. What do they sound like?
Check them out. They sound like Television.
Okay, I love Television. Yeah.
They sound like sort of Television meets the Strokes.
Okay, I was just going to mention the Strokes. I know a lot of people compare the two, but yeah, I love both those bands. So.
I've been listening to Geese, and I've been listening to. I like to listen to Radiohead. Geese is a new band that's going to be. You should definitely check them out.
I will.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, do you ever hear in songs musicians that you've sold guitars to using the guitars you sold them in the songs, and you're like, hey, that was the one?
Honestly, all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the dude from the Lumineers bought his main guitar from us. I'm like, I watched the Grammys. He's playing it.
Oh, that's so dope.
Yeah. Yeah, today I sold a guitar, the Arcade Fire, the singer, Win Butler.
Yep,
Win
there you
Butler.
go.
I sold a really cool bass to him. He's a good customer, and I just it's very gratifying when they use them to make great music.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if I get to New York City anytime soon, I will definitely come stop by your store, man. I can't wait to see some of these guitars in person, man. So
please do, Rob.
Awesome. Cool. Well, hey, thank you for taking the time. I know you had a long day already, so cool.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a wonderful night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Join the Rob Burgess Show mailing list. Go to tinyletter.com/The Rob Burgess Show and type in your email address. Then respond to the automatic message. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review everywhere the podcast is available, including iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, RSS, and now Spotify. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. If you have something to say, record a voice memo on your smartphone and send it to therobburgessshow@gmail.com. Include voice memo in the subject line of the email. Also, if you want to call or text the show for any reason, the number is 317-674-3547. Until next time.